Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Donna Chow, and I will be your host and your moderator for today's eLotus webinar. eLotus is the biggest CEU provider of continuing education for acupuncturists, where you can find the most topics and speakers on the internet today. Today's webinar is Palmistry, the sixth branch of Chinese medicine, part 2, presented by Rick Bernard. He is the second speaker on our eLotus website who is knowledgeable in palm diagnosis. The first speaker we had was back in 2019 with Dr. Hongwei Cheng, who spoke about TCM palm diagnosis. That was more of a Chinese palm diagnosis, whereas Rick's palmistry course is more of a Western palm diagnosis. In a moment, I'll post a link to Dr. Cheng's TCM palm diagnosis course in the chat room for you to take a look. Before we begin, let's do a little housekeeping. Today's webinar will be from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific time, and we will have one short break. For lecture notes, download them directly from the Blue Course Access page in your eLotus account. To use the webinar chat room, please set your chat preference to everyone so that everyone can see what you're writing and be part of the conversation. To ask the speaker a question, enter your question into the Q&A box. If time allows, the speaker will respond to them. And finally, the quiz and video replay. You'll be notified by email tomorrow afternoon once they are available. All right, let's get started with today's webinar and welcome Rick Bernard. We first collaborated with Rick back in 2018 for an eSTEM webinar, as he is a prominent expert in the field of acupuncture orthopedics and the author of Orthopedic Electroacupuncture. If you want to buy his eSTEM course, I'll share the link to Rick's speakers page on elotus.org in a moment. So from that class, we chatted a bit, and we were pleasantly surprised to learn that he is also skilled in palmistry, often known as hand analysis. Rick has studied palmistry for over 20 years with his mentor, Richard Ugner, and today he will share his interpretation of what he has learned in hopes that it inspires us to study more about this branch of medicine to better support our patients and clients. Okay, Rick, you can go ahead and take over and share your PowerPoint.
Okay, hi everybody. Let me give a brief introduction for those of you who don't know me. See if I can get this to move here a bit. We'll get a little, hold on one second. Yeah, need to forward this. Okay. I hope you can all hear me here. And my name is Rick Bernard, as Donna mentioned. And let me tell you a little bit about how I got started with palmistry. I actually started, so I've been practicing acupuncture for 30 years. And actually recently retired after 30 years. And I met a man probably close to 30 years ago that read my hand just on a whim. And he kind of blew me away, and it really got me interested in palmistry. And so I enrolled in a school that he had and studied in a year program, and now I continue to study today. So I've been studying actually probably close to 30 years, actually. I studied different systems, but I found hand analysis actually to give more information than any other system that I studied. Many of you have probably taken some of my classes in electroacupuncture, which I specialized in when I practiced acupuncture. Spent many years studying electroacupuncture, and it took me a long time to really figure out how to wire that in and discover what the keys were to making it work. So if you have a chance to take my class on eLotus, I think you'll learn a lot. It changed my life as an acupuncturist, and I think it'll change yours as well. So what can palmistry tell you, and what can it tell you? So usually people associate palmistry with gypsy fortune telling. Now, we can't tell the future with palmistry, but we can tell the here and now. The issues that people have. It's really getting to know what you're all about, what really gives meaning to your life. It really helps the person that actually studies this as well, because you really get to know what your strengths are. And by knowing your strengths, you can actually strengthen those strengths. They get stronger And then you learn your weaknesses too and what areas you need to work on. So it's really about self-knowledge, and it takes a long time. I feel like I'm still learning palmistry. There's always something new. It's very much like Chinese medicine. You can always study something new or study with somebody new and learn a different way of interpreting the hands. But the story is there. We all have a story, what we're born with. The lines, the shapes in the hands, those things can actually change to some extent, at least the minor lines, the main lines, the heart, the lifeline, and the headline, those we're born with. So much of our personality is based on inheritance, what we inherit. Just like we inherit physical characteristics, we actually inherit personality as well. But there's that whole nature versus nurture. Now, it depends on what kind of family you're raised in. If you were raised in a very outgoing family where people discuss things and you were open to come out of your shell, you can change. A line can change. If you're, for example, if you have a hermit heart line, which is a person who tends to be very reserved, and you're born into a family that's very talkative and very open, and you learn to come out of that, you can stretch that a little bit, your comfort zone. But your innate personality is really inherited. The first thing I did when I had my children was I looked at their hands, and I just looked to see if their heart line was a curvy heart line or a straight heart line. And it gave me an idea of what to expect from them, whether they were going to be emotionally expressive people or be more reserved, more shy tendencies. And it really has held true. It's really kind of a fun thing to do with friends. You can take a look at their hands. You can tell a lot about what their emotional response is, how they relate to other people, what they expect in a relationship, what they need, what they're going to be like. It's very interesting. Just by reading the heart line, if you look at a married couple, the man and the woman, and you compare their heart lines and see how they compare, and you can kind of tell what kind of issues they're likely to run into. It's really kind of a fun work. My mentor actually does a lot of couples palmistry, and you can kind of forecast where they're going to run into issues, and then you can kind of head those off if you kind of know what a person's needs are. So this class, we're going to go continue on with fundamentals. Okay, for many of you, hopefully a lot of you have taken the first class already and given you a base. This is just going to expand on that. And there's a lot here. There's a lot of information. Now, we don't finish anything. I'm going to continue on. I'm going to do a series of classes here. And we can just pick up from where I think next class I'm going to do a class on gift markings, but we're going to study some other things as well along with this, just gift markings, okay? And I'll talk a little bit about that later, exactly what we're going to go over on the next class as well. Today, we're going to do zones in the hand, different areas of the hand, kind of learn orientation of the hand, just kind of a landscape. Just by taking a brief look at the hand, we can kind of get an idea of what the person's like. We're going to study horizontal lines that run this direction in the hand. We're going to study vertical lines, what the difference is. We're going to study what's called attack lines or opportunity lines and what those are all about. Again, those are very similar to horizontal lines. They're going to be issues. Verticals are roots to the trees. Verticals are usually positive energy. Is this kind of energy? Horizontal lines is this kind of energy. It's trouble. Okay. And we're going to discuss our need system, and that's determined by the setting of our fingers, where the finger exits the palm, and if there's any deviation of where, and I'll show you, there should be just a natural curve on where the fingers exit the palm. And if we have time, we'll look at some prints, just kind of get a glimpse at different types of prints and what kind of issues they may be dealing with, and just to have some fun. So try to save your questions if you can for the last 30 minutes. Yeah, just try to hold those off, and then we'll put them in the chat. And in the last 30 minutes, we'll try and address those types of questions, okay? Okay, so this is really a great lead-in. I mean, Chinese medicine is really about diagnosing the body from the outside. I mean, thousands of years ago, they didn't have the diagnostics that they have today. They couldn't take x-rays, they couldn't do blood tests, so they learned to read the body. And most of the systems that we learned in school were more for physical problems. We look at the tongue, and we can tell what the inner landscape is by examining the tongue or the ear or whatever. But this system is about more psychology, more about what our emotional needs are, what kind of problems are, how we think, how we feel. So it's more psychologically based. And it's kind of what I'm focusing on these days. I've done a lot of physical classes on teaching, like I said, how to do electroacupuncture and treat from an orthopedic style of acupuncture. But now I kind of want to address this because I think this is very much a part of recovery for most people. You want to sometimes treating a person just not about the perfect needle combination or the perfect herbal formula. It's about addressing psychological problems as well occasionally. You don't have to be a psychologist in this profession to succeed, but it helps to bond with your patients. Yeah, just to get to know what they're all about, really. Because usually the body will mimic what's going on with the mind. If you calm the mind, the body will follow. So I've studied. So Chinese medicine, again, microsystems: ear, the face, the foot, the abdomen, the tongue are all commonly used to diagnose people. I've studied most of these in depth, except for the I haven't done much with abdomen diagnosis. I actually treat the abdomen quite a bit. And mostly a massage technique I learned from a Korean man. But the first person I saw, actually, one of my introductions to body reading systems was through reading the face through Lillian Bridges, and Lillian actually passed away not too long ago, and it's really a huge loss to the profession, and she was a wonderful person. I actually met her close to 30 years ago too. It was she wasn't doing much work with Chinese medicine then and giving classes, which she later ended up doing quite a bit of. I got a hold of her, and I think she was based out of Santa Barbara, and she told me she was doing a little class for a group of women somewhere in Los Angeles. So I flew down to LA, and I think with my girlfriend, and we sat in a class with her for a couple hours and listened to her teach 20 women how to read the face. It was really interesting stuff. And you can read personality through the face as well. And she did a lot of that, but a lot of physical stuff as well. The hands, I find you can get just a lot more information, and it's much easier to use the system. There are really some really clear rules that if you follow, you can really just learn a lot more just by reading the hand. And it's right there too. We're taking the pulse. The hand is right. The palm is right there. We can look at it really easy. And the person doesn't even have to know what you're doing. And you can start saying a few things, and you're going to gain instant credibility, I can guarantee you. Obviously, tongue diagnosis. This is the book I started with in tongue diagnosis. It's a good book by Giovanni. Ear acupuncture, auricular therapy. Real interesting. One of the first acupuncturists I saw was a man, Robert Zeiger, based out of Berkeley, California, and he was looking in my ear. It's my first treatment with Chinese medicine, with acupuncture. And he started telling me about my health through my ear. And he asked me about my knee surgery on my left knee. He said, "When did you get your knee surgery on your left knee?" And I had no idea what he was doing, but years later, after I was a student, after I graduated, I came back and I asked him, "How did you know, these things? How did you know I had my knee surgery on my left knee?" He goes, "Well, there's a dark vein that runs right through the area in your ear that corresponds to the knee." And so I knew there was some kind of a trauma there. So I took a little stab, and I figured you probably had surgery there, which indeed was true. But he told me a lot of different things. So ear diagnosis can be really, really revealing as well. It's an interesting story about foot reflexology. I was about 3 years ago, I guess it was, I moved to an apartment, and it had these really hard floors. And after about 4 months or so, one night I was walking, and my foot just blew up. It was as though somebody took a balloon and just exploded it in my foot. No idea what it was. I went to the emergency room. They looked at it. They took x-rays. They thought maybe it was a sesamoid injury, maybe a fracture. Took x-rays, MRIs, everything. Didn't really show anything but a lot of inflammation. Well, about 6 months after that, and the area where the pain was centered was right where the heart is, on the left foot. And about 6 months after that, I ended up in the hospital with a heart issue. So I think that was kind of a pronoun. That was a sign that there was something actually wrong with that area. And I would bet my life on it. And so I went through a year and a half of therapy and heart ablations and everything. I'm much better now, thank God. But it kind of showed me that, wow, there's definitely a lot to foot reflexology and diagnosis as well. Iridology. I studied, another thing I studied was iridology in school. Had a very eclectic practice. I didn't want to just pigeonhole myself in Chinese medicine. As much as I loved it, I liked to explore things. I used to fly down to San Diego and take classes in constitutional iridology. And it's more a physical type of iridology. And you look at a spot and you find a spot in the liver and they say, okay, there's a liver issue there. But another way to look at one of the students in the class said, told me about a system he was using called RAYID system, RAYID, and it's a psychological system of reading the eyes. And he goes, let me take a look at your eyes. And he looked at my eyes and he started telling me so much about myself and actually about my parents as well. Your right eye corresponds to your father, I believe, and your left eye, your mother. And he told me also sorts of things about their personality that were just right on. So another thing that's interesting to study, to maybe take a look at if you have a chance, called the RAYID system, RAYID. And this is the man that wrote it. He calls it behavior iridology, but it's all about getting a psychological profile of people. And you can find all sorts of neat information about their behaviors. Besides hand analysis, probably I've studied handwriting analysis probably as much as anything. Again, it was a personal experience. A woman actually looked at my handwriting, had me write a sentence, take time to think today, and told me all about my life and what I liked, what I didn't like. It was just amazing. So handwriting is really brain writing. It's really, again, it's very similar to the lines in our hand. It's really a wiring diagram to our brain, and how you mark a letter, how you structure your writing tells you a lot about who you are. So a Y, for example, you can see all the different ways you can shape a Y. And Y is kind of the sexual letter. It kind of tells you about your physical drives. And when you see a big loop, as in the bottom right, that's a person that's got a very strong physical drive. And the longer the line comes down, it's in the physical zone, the lower zone, the more physical needs, desires a person has. The bigger loop has to do with a big imagination. So something to look for if you're going on a first date, to check out their Y and see what they're like. And then finally, hand analysis is what really caught my imagination when Richard Unger read my hand, took a glance at it for about 30 seconds and told me so much about myself. So as you can see, this has really been an interest of mine for a long time. So I really want to share it. It's fun stuff. There's always something to learn. I'm still learning. I feel like I'm a beginner in some ways, but we're going to really concentrate on personality psychology right now. There's also another way to read the hands is through dramatic lithics, actually the fingerprint patterns. That's when it gets really heavy. And then you're getting information about what you're here for, what your life purpose is, life lesson. It's a little more esoteric, some esoteric for a lot of people. Everybody in my class that had it done, it blew them away. It's issues they've been dealing with their whole life. Your life purpose is what makes your life full, what fulfills you at the deepest level. And when you're doing that, your life is really flowering. So it's good information to know. It'll save you years of searching. Am I doing the right thing? Should I be doing something else? It's really amazing stuff. And I hope to get into doing a class of that later. It's going to be the hardest thing for me to teach. But it'll give you some really, really fun information and neat information and hopefully useful information. So this is Know Thyself Palmistry. This is issue-oriented palmistry. This isn't about reading the future, although you can get some information about how a person is likely to behave based on the way they're wired, what their inclination is. So the power provided by self-knowledge is the power to change, enhance, and shape our lives in ways that align with our true selves. Yeah, it's really about gaining a greater appreciation for your own uniqueness. And it really helps you learn about your meaning, what you're here for, what you're good at, what you're not so good at, what you need to work on. And it's fun. It's really fun stuff. You can do it at any level. You can do it with friends. You can go to a health fair, psychic fair, spend the day. I've done that, and just blow people away. You'll have a line out the door. I guarantee it. But mostly, for me, I did it because I wanted to help people, and maybe guide them in ways that I couldn't any other way. You can learn more in a 2-minute glance at the hand than you can in 2 years of working with somebody sometimes. So you really do get to know their essence. So this is just to give you a glance at looking in the hand. You can just get a feel for what a person is kind of like to some degree, just by looking at the hand and looking at how many lines there are in the hand. So, call this your internal wiring diagram. It really tells about what the neuron traffic is in the brain. And so on the left, left bottom, you see a picture of looks like an earthy hand with very few lines on it. And earth-shaped hands tend to have very few lines on it. And if you look at it, it's based on a basic light switch here. There's very few options here. It's on or off. And that's how earth types are. It's things are very simple in their lives. We'll talk about that more as we go along here. And in the middle is a little bit more extensive wiring. You see a few more lines. But then on the right, you see a hand very full of lines. It's more of a fire type hand. And you can see all the lines in it. You can see the different options that must be available to this person. Perhaps chaos, perhaps issues of keeping it all together. Nervous system is going to be much more active, but much more complex than this hand on the left. So just by looking at the person's hands and seeing how the line structure and how many lines there are, you can get an idea about their nervous system and how active it is. The one on the left, they tend to want to keep life simple, very basic. Don't have as many options to choose from. Everything's kind of black and white. Where on the right, it's so many options. Can we keep it all together? And then you want to look at things like the thumb and see how strong the thumb is and the lifeline, and make sure, and even the Saturn finger, this finger of responsibility and accountability and structure, and see if it helps keep their lives together, because it can be very chaotic and anxiety producing if they can't keep all these different options and ways to look at things and things to do. It's a lot of things to do with hands like this. Okay. So many lines. There's always strengths and weaknesses. You can look at almost anything in the hand. You can see the positives in it, and then you could see more of a challenge in it. And so with many lines, you have a person that's a little bit more adaptable, more flexible. They can see things differently, can try things out differently, or willing to try things differently. Versatile. They like variety. It's a much more complex personality. Things can change very quickly, but they're able sometimes to see maybe the nuances in issues where the simple line, very few lines, have trouble with that. They want to keep things really simple. It's black or white. She loves me or she doesn't. It's very, very simple, and they like it that way. But these lines don't. They like to be busy. Okay, they have a lot of connections, a lot of electrical connections here. It's a lot of different possibilities. The people that can do that are able to synthesize things, put things together, because they just have more angles and different ways to look at things. Where again, the earth type hand with no lines is very, very simple, not able to really synthesize things like a hand full of lines. And they're busy. They have a lot going on. Fire hands are busy. They have all sorts of things going on. The challenge with them usually is, can they complete things? Great starters, but can they keep on track? So always check for the Saturn and see if there's a Saturn line in place to kind of keep them on track and responsible, and not getting stuck on sideline stuff. Okay. So those are the positive things, really busy, energetic, lots of possibilities, able to synthesize, they see things from different angles. The negative spot of things might be fickle, moody, variable. They can change their feelings, change things. They can be one religion the next day, and then they can see something else and see Buddhism, and they say, well, I want to try that. So not as stable as the earth hand with few lines, much more unpredictable. Maybe less stable, unstable. They tend towards a little bit more anxiety possibilities. Okay, they get lost in the maze, conflicting thoughts, feelings. What do I do? Do I do A, B, C, or D? Where earth line has A or B, and that's it. Okay, again, anxiety possibilities, chaotic, frenetic, etc. Now, hand with fewer lines, let's look at the positives. Things are simple. They like to keep things very simple. They're very reliable people. They're very regular. They want oatmeal every day. Okay, if they have to have something different, oh my God, what do I do? I don't have my oatmeal. I can't have eggs today. This is Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. Thursday and Friday, I might try eggs. But whenever I think of these type of hands, I think of my brother, who I love very much, but he's a very earthy type. And he is very set in his ways. He's very honest, very hardworking, but very rigid. And he likes to do things the same way, do the same things over and over again. So he goes to Hawaii, his vacation for the past 30 years, probably. He goes to vacation to Hawaii every single year, every year. And nowhere else, just Hawaii. And so I talked to him about, hey, Randy, you have all this time, why don't you try something different? Why don't you go to Europe? So you go to France, I think you'll love it. Just try it. Nope. I'm going to stick with Hawaii. I know what it's like. I know what to expect. And that's just the way he is. He's very direct, very straightforward, very clear on what he thinks. And he's good with it. He doesn't want to be anything different than what he is. So the downside of that, again, is inflexibility, rigidity, right? You're not open to try new things. Okay, just stubborn, intractable. That's him to a T. I love my brother. I go vacation with him. He lived in Burbank his whole life, and then the last 5 years he moved to Vegas, which was amazing that he even did that. And I go see him every year, but I can take about 2 days with him, and I'm done. So yeah, it can be a challenge to be with somebody that's really stuck and rigid on one way of looking at things and wanting to do one thing. Okay, let's move forward here. Okay, so let's get a little feel for, there's a few zones I want you to know in the hand that give a little flavor of a person's personality. And the first one we'll look at is the Mars zone. So take a look. This is the Mars zone kind of through here. Hopefully you can see my, let me see if I can add something here. Spotlight. I hope you can kind of see this whole zone here. This is the Mars zone. Okay, and Mars is the warrior. Okay, how do we get out of this? Okay, Mars is the god of war, conflict, endurance, courage, fortitude, stamina, power. Those are all good words for the Mars zone. Chutzpah is a good word. They've got this courage, this willingness to try things and sometimes strike out. So if you have too much, it can be an area where anger comes from. It's an action area in the hand, and when we talk about attack lines later, it's an area that creates action. Anger actually creates action. Fear creates is where you kind of freeze. You don't do anything. So a lot of therapies and psychological therapies teach you how to mobilize your anger and get you moving, and as opposed to being stuck in fear and frozen, really. So anger can be a good thing. Too much can cause belligerence, obviously. There's an anger line in the hand we'll show you later, and it all starts from this Mars zone. Okay. Too little, the area is really flat in the hand, and it's hard to tell on prints. I'm going to show you one print, but it's hard to tell from the print. You'll just see kind of a bulging area there when there's a lot of energy there. Too little is a lack of energy. Okay. And here's the Mars zone, as you can see. And it looks a little puffy here, but it's, like I said, it's kind of hard to tell in this print, but in a hand, you'll actually see a real puffiness here. Okay. Okay, the moon zone is on the other side of the hand. It's on the ulnar side of the hand. Let's see if I just take a quick. So here's the ulnar zone. this red arrow is, and you can see how it kind of bulges out. Some people you'll see this line will be very flat, very straight. You'll see in this case, it actually bulges out. So a moon zone is the area of deep feelings, deep thoughts, deep meaning, dreams, imagination, intuition, spirituality, the subconscious. Too much, if you have too much of this area, you'll be kind of, people will see you as kind of dreamy, kind of aloof. Too little, a person who has a lack of imagination, they're not accessing that area of their personality. Can cause disillusionment, alienation. When we talk about, I'll show you some Persephone lines, a heart headline in the hand. Some headlines actually go and they go down into that zone. And we talked about it, I think the first class, it's a marker of depression because they stay in that deep feeling zone too long. So it's okay to visit there, but you don't want to stay there a long time. You want to try to come back out. But there is a tendency to people have a headline that curves and approaches down into that moon zone. They have problems with depression. Those people tend to associate with other people, and sometimes they try to help other people deal with. It can be a positive marker because it can help you counsel people that have similar problems of depression. So it depends on how you use it. Okay. Again, just check out the line structure. And as we go through prints, even though it might not be on the subject I'm talking about, I'm just going to point things out that seem obvious, that it's just good to get a look at as many hands as you can to really learn this stuff. And you can see how busy this hand is. This is a very busy line. A lot of stuff going on. There's two lines actually that go up towards Saturn, vertical lines. You can see those are career lines. And sometimes when you have two lines like this, it's having two careers. It's what do I want to do? Do I want to? I actually had a girlfriend actually years ago that had two fate lines, they're called. And she was balancing two jobs. She was working at Hewlett Packard in the day, and at night she was doing body work on people. And she was having a hard time deciding what she wanted to do. Was she ready to switch over? So it's, can you commit to one thing, to one career is what kind of issue that kind of tends to come up with these people. Again, back to this. This is the big moon area. Okay, heavy imagination. And then the Venus zone. And the Venus zone, again, is this part of the thenar eminence. You can see how it's very bulgy down where the red arrow is showing. It's a person with a lot of physical needs, physical pleasure. Venus was the goddess of love and beauty. So love, these are all words that kind of associate with the zone: warmth, love, kindness, generosity, sensuality, sexuality, pleasure, big hugs. So it's a person that has a strong tactile need. They need to hug. They need to touch people. They need to feel people passionately. It's a sexual zone. So if it's too much, it's a person who maybe is a little bit too much oriented towards that. And as it wrote here, too much indulgence of appetites. Too little, coldness, stinginess. Sometimes you'll see even blue in that area. Whenever you have blue, and blue is very common in this area because blue means, if you see blue in the hand, it means blue means you have the blues. So there's something to be aware of. We haven't talked much about color in the hand, but blue means the blues. And you'll see it usually around the heart, inside the lifeline rather, or somewhere along the thenar eminence area. I actually saw hands from a person who had an addiction to drugs, and he had a very large Venus zone. I mean, again, pleasure. He was maybe inappropriately trying to satisfy this pleasure need he had, physical need, and he was trying to do it through medication, through drugs. But generally, people like that, they're big huggers. They're just very physical oriented people. And energetic. This is an area where you look for if a person has a lot of energy. This area, the thenar eminence, and also the tip of the tongue, or tip of the thumb rather, the two areas. If you see a lot of bulging in the tip of the thumb, it's a person who has good willpower, good energy. okay, along with the thenar eminence. Okay, big venous zone, you can certainly see how that qualifies. Pretty simple line structure here, very few lines here, in the hand here. It's a pretty earthy hand, a little bit longer fingers, maybe a little bit of air mixed in there also, but overall pretty earthy hand, square box type of a hand. And again, those type of hands are people that like things more simple. They like to work with the earth. They're really grounded, more grounded people. Fewer problems with anxiety typically, just because they like to keep things very simple. Okay, I included this slide just because it's another way to look at the hands. It just gives you, just for orientation and maybe just give you a landscape of the hands. And I used this analogy before. The hand is like a garden, and the palm of the hand is like your soil, and your fingers are kind of like the trees and what's viewable. The trees are viewable in the garden. You can actually see those from the outside. So it's the outer world of a person, where the lower part of the palm is more the inside. What's your inner world is, your feeling world, your private hidden world. Again, the upper part of the hand is more your outer persona, your outer world, what the world sees of you. The left side from the Saturn finger, you can see how it's cut in half also. And the thumb side is more our outer world. I put doing. It contains the thumb and the Jupiter finger. Sorry about that. And the thumb is a doer. The thumb likes action. It's going to make things happen. So it's a very much more active part. Where the other side, the ulnar side of the hand, is more inner related, inner needs, intuitive stuff, unconscious needs, more being, okay, more private part of you. Contains the moon, a little more serious side of ourselves, right? And if you look at each zone, there's 4 zones that are created by quartering this thing. In the upper left would be a zone of ambition, contains the Jupiter finger, and Jupiter is all about ambition, right? Power, authority, leadership, and the thumb's about helping you get there. So it's very much an ambitious zone. Below that contains the family, thenar eminence, and then the lifeline. That area really more relates to the family and family influence. The right lower has to do more with intuition, and it contains the moon. So again, it's unconscious things, deep feelings, not so much logic, more intuition. And then the upper right more has to do with how you communicate to the world. Okay, it contains which is the Mercury finger, and then the Apollo finger, the ring finger, also is about performing. It's the fame and fortune in the arts. It's a person who wants to outwardly express who they are. Okay, so that's more of the communication zone. Just to give you kind of an orientation, of the hand. What about line quality? We want to look at line quality, and a strong line quality is deep, clear, and unobstructed. There's no markings on it. There's no breaks on it. There's no little circles, and we'll look at them a little bit, bubbles on it. There's nothing impeding the energy of that line. So lines are like rivers in the body, and a river gets slowed down if there's like a lot of rocks or debris in it. Okay, generally you want lines of the hand to be nice and smooth. That means the energy of that line, whatever that line represents, is very strong, very clear, and everything's working just the way it should. Okay. So the positive qualities of the line emerge when the line is very nice and smooth and clear. Okay. So these lines are pretty clear. You look at the lifeline, very clear, nothing really impeding it. Headline, same thing, very clear, no breaks. Heart line, same thing, very clear. Very few lines for this. This actually looks a lot, it's kind of a fire shape hand, kind of a weird oblong, kind of a weird shape to the palm. And usually the pure fire line has very short fingers. And usually usually fire has a lot of lines in it. So this is a little bit different. So there's always rules are always broken and hands. You can learn the basics, but you're going to see change to that a lot of times. And you just have to kind of try and figure out, try different things and see what might be going on with the person. There's a story there to tell. Sometimes it takes a little bit of uncovering to get there. Okay. Again, another line with pretty good line quality. The lifeline looks very good, very clear. The headline, very clear. The heart line, it's got a little bit of stuff going on here, a little bit of armoring possibly here, doubling of the lines, but it's a very clear line that goes up towards the finger. Again, it's a curvy finger, so it's going to be a more expressive type person. Short fingers like this, short fingers, people tend to process things quicker. They get to the point much faster. So long people, the thoughts tend to get stuck here a little bit. Longer fingers, especially if they have knuckles. Knuckles will always slow down the thought process. But the shorter the finger, usually the quicker a person acts. If you combine that with a short headline, then a person is going to be super quick. They really come to decisions super fast. Okay. Okay, with poor line quality, the negative qualities of a line emerge. Messy headline, messy thinking. Messy heart line, problems with their emotional life. Okay. Poor quality line, you can see how the lines here, well, if you look at the heart line, the top line that curves upward towards the fingers, you can see a lot of, especially towards the ulnar side, underneath the pinky finger, you can see a lot of stuff here, bubbles and crosses and X's and little bubbles in the line, and a lot of unclear emotional communications. A lot of it's in the intimacy zone, so there's going to be a lot of probably issues, especially because it has these X's here, a couple of X's it looks like, and that's a little bit of anger at your intimate partner. So a little bit of unclarity here in this upper heart line. Even the headline, if you look at the headline, especially where it starts, it's a little bit bumpy, not a very clear straight line. And if you look at the lifeline, you see how it's kind of widened out, and the widening is weakening of energy. Okay, thumb is kind of pushed up a little bit too closer than we like. We like to have the thumb ideally sitting a little bit wider from the fingers. So this is closer it gets to the fingers, the more you're under somebody else's thumb. You're not making decisions on your own. You're not making life happen. You want to get the thumb out. We're going to talk about this a little bit later for sure. Just try to stretch that thumb out. Okay, which looks a little bit uncomfortable there. Okay. And even start looking at the zones of the fingers themselves. You see the three zones. There's an upper zone where the tips are. And then you see a strong line that comes across, breaking to the next flange. You see the middle zone. And then the lower zone is the bottom line, just where the fingers exit the palm. And we want to look at those zones too and see how they compare. See which zone is longer than the other. Sometimes the zone will be much longer than another zone or much thicker. You can see how small the upper zones are compared to the lower zones. And we're going to talk about three-world interpretation in the hands. Probably in another class. We don't have time. We're going to talk about each zone too, each particular zone in the finger, what type of information that reveals, and just gives you a little bit more information on a person. And here's another poor line quality. You can see the heart line underneath the pinky finger, how the bubbles here, we call them chains, multiple chains. Very unclear here about their feelings, emotions. The headline's got you can see the bubble. If you go right down underneath the Saturn finger, the middle finger, you go straight down, you're going to see like a opening there, a bubbling underneath Saturn finger. And that usually has to do with career confusion. So maybe a little problems with job stuff. Okay, and then you can look at the lifeline, how it's really kind of petered out. It's a very short, and actually looks like it's actually might even be a little bit broken there, a very weak lifeline. And look at the connection between the lifeline and the headline. And there's a pretty long connection there. And that's a connection to family, your original family. And so when making decisions, you're a little bit more cautious. You usually want to check with your family before you make a decision on your own. Where separation here between the lifeline and the headline is more of an independence of thought. You're coming to decisions on your own. Okay. It's always good to look at. And you can see the fingers look pretty weak here. They didn't print very well. And usually fingers don't print well, or parts of the hand don't print well. They don't have a lot of ink because they don't have a lot of meat there. They don't have a lot of meat. They don't have a lot of energy. Okay, more of something mean, more thickness to the hand, more of whatever it is that you have. Okay, pretty simple rule. So these are challenge markers and lines. You can have chains, islands. Those are with those little openings that we saw. Breaks. I'll show you a clearer break here in a second. Sometimes there's grills, and I'll show you an example of what a grill looks like. It's more stop and go energy. Any horizontal line in the hand is usually a challenge line. Now, most of those lines these type of lines are mostly minor lines in the hand. They're not the major lines we're born with. So these are lines that are created during our lifetime, as we come up and face issues through our life, is these lines start to form. And usually much lighter lines, much thinner lines, a little bit harder to see sometimes. But as you do it more and more, you'll get a little bit better at reading the lines and finding those lines and which direction they're going and what area of the hand they're going to, because that all matters. Okay. So, but basically, challenge markers represent confusion, frustration, stress of some type. Okay. And even if it's a severe break, it can be a traumatic event. So breaks in a line is just discontinuity. It's a circuit break, like a circuit break in the hand. Okay, if it's in a heart line, it means a person can have just a hair trigger for something that happens in a relationship. And they can just kind of go off. They can feel trust issues, and usually that's what it is. They're afraid they're going to be abandoned, replaced by somebody else in the relationship. So, or it went through a severe problem, emotional problem with their intimate partner, can cause a break. Many times, even breaks are intergenerational. You're born with a break. It's not nothing you formed. Obviously, you're just born, but it's DNA that's been passed down from generation to generation. It's your parents might have dealt with it. Their parents might have dealt with it. It's passed on. And it's passed on. Can be passed on to you without you even having gone through it yet. But it makes it so that you have a hair trigger for that when if things like that happen to you, because you're just wired for it. Doesn't happen, you don't see it a lot, but when you see a really major break, it's particularly in the heart line. Actually, LeBron James has one. I saw a picture of his hands, was real interesting. He's had his wife, I think, since high school. So he's been with her for a long time. And it'd be interesting to talk to him about that. Bubbles equals troubles. So what we see bubbles in the hand, little bubbles in the hand, that's usually something going on. It's not good. Okay, difficulties. Doubling is armoring. Doubling, a lot of times, is when you have one line that runs right underneath another. I'm going to show you a picture of that. And that's just simply armoring. It's protecting yourself from getting hurt. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. Grills, you'll see grills. Sometimes you'll mostly see a grill underneath the Apollo finger. The Apollo finger is your performing finger. It's your area of creativity and self-expression. And a lot of people are confused on how to express their creativity. And they have a stop-go. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Maybe I should be doing this. They don't know which direction to go sometimes, so it's stop and go. So it's basically confusion. And then sometimes you'll see a star. It's where three lines cross with a common center. And those are explosions of energy. And that we're going to do a class on that. I think it's actually my next class, and they're actually gift markings. They're explosions of energy. It's potential to do something really special in an area. There's a lot of energy in place for you to do whatever activity, whichever finger they'll show up underneath. Sometimes stars are not so good, and I'll show you an example of that. Boxes just means you're boxed in somehow. Some of you are in a job. You're not doing what you want to do. You've been doing it for years. You know you should be doing something else, but you rely on the money to pay your rent. So you're kind of boxed in some way. Diamond's hard to explain. It's frozen energy. You don't know, you're just stuck, basically. Sometimes you'll see a diamond around the Gina heart line. I'll see if I can show a picture of it. It's just being stuck. You don't know which way to go. Dots kind of are kind of a blurry. Sometimes you'll see dots along the lifeline, and dots just mean stress, lifeline stress along your life, area of your life. And forks usually show up at the end of a line, and it's just a dualism. It's just a way to think of things in a couple of different ways. And I think I can show you one of the